My name is Ryan Miller, 32 years old, standing frozen on my childhood porch, arms full of Christmas gifts. The door swings open, revealing my mother Diana. Her smile vanishes. "You weren't invited," she says coldly. "This is for family only." I turn wordlessly, hearing laughter inside as the door closes. Minutes later, my sister Jessica texts, "Don't take it personally, you know how you are." Something breaks inside me, but clarity follows. Before I continue this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And hit subscribe to join me on this journey of standing up for yourself when family betrays you. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in what started as a happy home. My earliest memories are filled with my father Robert teaching me to ride a bike, build model airplanes, and solve puzzles. He worked as an engineer, bringing home small projects for us to work on together. "Always finish what you start, Ryan," he'd say. "That's how you build character." Those moments defined me, shaping a work ethic that would eventually save me. Everything changed when I was 8. Dad was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer, and within 6 months, he was gone. I remember standing at his funeral, holding my mother's hand, not fully comprehending that he would never come home again. Mom fell apart afterward. She'd stare at walls for hours, forget to make dinner, and cry in the bathroom when she thought I couldn't hear. I learned to make my own sandwiches, do my own laundry, and essentially take care of myself while she grieved. For years after Dad died, when I was 12, Mom introduced me to Warren Mitchell. "He makes me happy again," she explained, her eyes brighter than I'd seen in years. I wanted to be happy for her. Truly. Warren had a decent job in finance, drove a nice car, and made Mom laugh. Initially, he tried with me too, taking me to baseball games and asking about school. I cautiously hoped we might become a real family again. The wedding was small, and afterward, Warren moved into our house. Things were okay at first, but subtle shifts began. My childhood photos were relocated to my bedroom while Warren's family portraits claimed the living room walls. Dad's old chair disappeared during a necessary upgrade to the living room furniture. My suggestions for weekend activities were increasingly ignored in favor of Warren's preferences. When Mom announced she was pregnant a year after the wedding, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. I was happy for her new chance at happiness but worried about my place in this evolving family. Jessica was born when I was 14, followed by Tyler 2 years later. They were cute kids, and I tried to be a good big brother, but it became increasingly clear that Warren saw them as his real family. The changes were subtle at first. Warren would plan family outings that somehow always happened when I had debate team or work. Mom would explain, "We didn't think you'd want to come anyway, honey. You're always so busy." Christmas mornings featured towering piles of presents for the little ones, while my gifts became increasingly practical: school supplies, plain clothes, occasionally a used book. By 16, I was working after school at a local grocery store, partly to save for college, but mostly to have a reason to be out of the house. Warren never said it directly, but his message was clear. I was a remnant of Mom's previous life, a financial burden he tolerated. When I'd achieved something, winning a science competition or getting excellent grades, Mom would briefly celebrate before Warren would redirect attention to Jessica's finger painting or Tyler's first steps. I graduated high school with honors and earned a partial scholarship to Oregon State for computer science. The remaining tuition came from my savings and student loans. Mom attended my graduation but left early because Tyler wasn't feeling well. I later saw Instagram photos of them at an amusement park that same afternoon. During college, I rarely went home except when explicitly invited for major holidays. Even then, I'd often find myself seated at the far end of the table, like a distant relative rather than a son. The conversations would flow around me as if I were invisible. I'd ask Jessica about school or Tyler about his interest in video games, only to have Warren interrupt with family news that somehow never included me. I graduated college with minimal debt thanks to working throughout my degree. My first job at a tech startup in Seattle paid well, and I quickly rose through the ranks as a software engineer. When that company was acquired, I used my bonus to start my own consultancy, which grew steadily over the next 5 years. Throughout this time, my relationship with my family followed a predictable pattern. Weeks or months of silence would be broken by urgent texts or calls when they needed something, usually money. Mom's medical emergency turned out to be elective cosmetic surgery. Warren's business opportunity was a multi-level marketing scheme. Jessica's educational necessity was a spring break trip to Cancun. Despite knowing better, I set up a joint account with Mom for emergencies and deposited a generous amount monthly. I also took over payments for their utilities, internet, and cell phones. I convinced myself it was the right thing to do, that family supports family. When Mom called me her rock during these financial transfers, I clung to the rare affirmation. The pattern of exclusion continued. I wasn't invited to Jessica's high school graduation party. I found out about it through Facebook photos. When I sent Tyler an expensive gaming console for his birthday, Mom texted a quick thanks but never sent photos or had him call. Family vacation photos never included me, though they were often taken with equipment I had purchased as gifts. Last Christmas, I sent gifts but wasn't invited to the celebration. Mom explained they were keeping it small this year, due to COVID concerns, though social media showed a house full of Warren's relatives. I accepted the excuse and sent money instead of making a fuss. 2 weeks before this Christmas, I called Mom to specifically discuss visiting. "Of course you should come, sweetie," she said. "We'll have dinner on the 23rd. I'll make your favorite lasagna." I asked if I should bring anything, and she suggested, "Maybe some wine." I spent the next 2 weeks selecting thoughtful gifts: a cashmere sweater for Mom, high-end whiskey for Warren, the latest iPhone for Jessica, and a gaming laptop for Tyler. I even booked a nice hotel nearby so I wouldn't impose by staying at the house. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. Mom didn't confirm a time for dinner. She didn't respond to my text the day before. When I called that morning, she sounded distracted and said, "Oh, we're quite busy preparing. Just come around 6. There was noise in the background that sounded like many more people than our small family. I ignored the sinking feeling in my stomach. I wanted so badly to believe I was wanted. To have one normal family Christmas. I convinced myself that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, I would finally feel like I belong. I couldn't have been more wrong. December 23rd started with promise. Snow had fallen overnight, dusting Portland with a perfect layer of white that made everything look like a holiday card. I woke early in my hotel room, excited despite my lingering doubts. I spent the morning wrapping the last of the gifts, using expensive paper with Rio ribbon. I wanted everything to be perfect. At 5:30, I loaded everything into my car and set the GPS for the house I grew up in but rarely visited anymore. Christmas music played on the radio as I drove through familiar neighborhoods decorated with lights and inflatable Santas. I practiced casual conversation topics in my head, determined to keep things light and positive. When I turned onto my old street, I noticed several unfamiliar luxury cars parked in and around the driveway. The house glowed with white string lights, and I could see a large decorated tree through the front window. The sight momentarily took my breath away. It looked exactly like the family Christmas I had always wanted. I parked behind a Mercedes I didn't recognize and gathered the gift bags from my trunk. As I approached the front door, I could hear laughter and music inside. The sound of clinking glasses and multiple conversations confirmed my suspicion that this was more than just our family dinner. Still, Mom had invited me, so I balanced the packages and rang the doorbell. The door swung open, and there stood my mother in a glittering black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. For a split second, Her face showed genuine delight, until recognition set in. Her smile vanished, replaced by an expression I can only describe as panic mixed with annoyance. "Ryan," she said, her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Confusion washed over me. "You invited me for dinner tonight. Remember? You said you'd make lasagna." She glanced nervously over her shoulder at the crowded room behind her. I could see Warren in a dark suit, talking animatedly with people I didn't recognize. The house had been redecorated since I last visited, new furniture, artwork, and what looked like recently renovated flooring. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said firmly, her voice hardening. "You weren't invited. This is for family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, arms full of carefully chosen gifts, as her meaning sank in. I wasn't family. After all these years, all the financial support, all the one-sided effort to maintain a relationship, I wasn't family. "I see," was all I could manage to say. She didn't invite me in. Didn't offer an explanation. Didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Instead, she began to close the door. "You should go," she said, over her shoulder. I caught Warren's eye. He noticed me, frowned slightly, then deliberately turned away to refill his drink. I turned without another word and walked back to my car. I placed the gifts carefully in the trunk, closed it, and drove away. My chest felt tight, my face burning with humiliation. I couldn't process what had just happened, the absolute rejection delivered so casually, as if I were a stranger who had knocked on the wrong door. I drove aimlessly for a while before pulling into a convenience store parking lot. I needed to catch my breath, to think. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Don't take it personally, you know how you are. Mom wanted a nice holiday without your judgment. Maybe next time." I stared at the message, reading it over and over. "You know how you are." What exactly did that mean? How was I? Generous to a fault? Available whenever they needed money? Excluded from every meaningful family event? The audacity of her message stunned me into silence. Before I could respond, another text came through, this one from Tyler. "Why did you have to show up and ruin everything? It's Jessica's night." Jessica's night? What was I missing? I opened Instagram and scrolled through recent posts. There it was, Jessica standing with a young man I'd never seen before, showing off an engagement ring. My half-sister was engaged. And no one had bothered to tell me. The celebration tonight wasn't just a random holiday party. It was an engagement party disguised as Christmas dinner when talking to me. Sitting in that dimly lit parking lot, something fundamental shifted inside me. I opened my banking app and checked the joint account I shared with Mom. There were several recent withdrawals. $2,000 at a jewelry store, $3,000 at a catering company, $1,200 at a high-end liquor store, and various other charges that clearly related to tonight's celebration. They had used my money to fund a party I wasn't welcome to attend. I checked into my hotel in a daze. The festive lobby with its towering Christmas tree and cheerful staff felt like another universe compared to the cold rejection I'd just experienced. In my room, I laid out all the evidence of my one-sided relationship with my family. Years of bank statements showing regular deposits into the joint account. Records of utility payments, insurance premiums, cell phone bills. Text message threads full of urgent requests for money followed by sparse thank yous. Birthday and holiday cards I'd sent that received minimal acknowledgement. Photos of family events I hadn't been invited to, many featuring luxury items I had indirectly funded. I barely slept that night. Instead, I made lists, checked records, and calculated exactly how much support I had provided over the years. The total made me physically ill, $87,432 over 5 years. Not including gifts, emergency loans that were never repaid, or the emotional cost of being perpetually available for their needs while being treated as an outsider. By morning, I had made my decision. If I wasn't family enough to be invited to their celebration, I wasn't family enough to keep bankrolling their lifestyle. As the sun rose on Christmas Eve, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: clarity. I woke on Christmas Eve with purpose, my night of insomnia having crystallized my thoughts. If they wanted to define our relationship as not family, I would respect their definition and adjust accordingly. I opened my laptop and created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every cent I had contributed to their lives over the past 5 years. Monthly utilities, $34,560. Cell phone family plan, $8. 640. Car payments and insurance for mom, $28,200. Emergency, cash transfers, $16,032. Total, $87,432. I added screenshots of text messages showing their requests. Ryan, honey, our electricity is about to be shut off. Warren's bonus is delayed again. Can you help? Just until next month. Big bro, I need $800 for a school trip. Mom said to ask you. I'll pay you back when I get my summer job. The car broke down, and we can't afford repairs. You know how important reliable transportation is for us. None of these loans had ever been repaid. None of the promised temporary assistance had ever actually been temporary. And none of my generosity had earned me a place at their table. At 9 a.m., I called my bank and requested an emergency appointment. The representative heard the urgency in my voice and squeezed me in at 10:30. I dressed professionally, gathered my documentation, and drove to the local branch. I need to freeze a joint account immediately, I told the bank manager, a kind-faced woman named Patricia. I explained the situation briefly and showed her evidence of the recent large withdrawals made without my knowledge or consent. We can definitely help you with this, Mr. Miller, she assured me. Since it's a joint account, we can't remove the other party without their signature, but we can freeze the account to prevent further withdrawals. There was currently $23.50 in the account, money I had deposited for my mother's upcoming medical expenses, which I now suspected were fabricated. With a few signatures, the account was frozen. No withdrawals could be made without both our signatures, effectively locking the money in place. Next, I systematically went through every automatic payment I had set up for their household. Electricity, cancelled. Water, cancelled. Gas, cancelled. Internet and cable, cancelled. Home security system, cancelled. Streaming services, cancelled. Each cancellation came with the same explanation. I'm no longer responsible for this household's expenses. The cell phone family plan was next. I called the provider and explained that I needed to remove 3 lines from my account. I'll continue paying for my line only, I specified. The representative asked if I wanted to notify the other users before their service was disconnected. No, I said firmly. That won't be necessary. The most satisfying call was to the credit card company. Mom, Jessica, and Tyler all had supplementary cards on my account, cards that had seen increasing activity in recent months. I need to cancel all supplementary cards immediately, I told the representative. May I ask why, sir? Is there a problem with the cards? The authorized users are no longer authorized, I replied simply. By noon, I had systematically dismantled the financial infrastructure that had supported their lifestyle for years. My phone began buzzing almost immediately, but I silenced all calls from their numbers. This wasn't a conversation I wanted to have over the phone. I met with my friend Samuel, a lawyer, for lunch. He listened to my story without interruption, occasionally taking notes. From a legal standpoint, you've done nothing wrong, he assured me when I finished. Joint accounts are exactly that, joint. Either party can freeze them if they suspect misuse. As for the utilities and credit cards in your name, you have every right to cancel services you're paying for. Will they have any recourse? I asked. They could try to argue that you made verbal agreements or implied promises of ongoing support, but without documentation, those claims wouldn't go far. I suggest keeping all records of their financial requests and your responses. Also, document any harassment that follows your actions. Samuel helped me draft a formal letter outlining the termination of financial support, citing specific instances of exclusion and the explicit statement that I wasn't considered family. This establishes your reasonable basis for withdrawing support, he explained. It transforms this from an emotional reaction to a logical response to changed circumstances. I created a temporary email address specifically for any necessary communication about this situation. The regular channels, my personal email, phone, and social media, would likely be flooded with emotional appeals and accusations. As evening approached, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. I grieved for the family I had tried so hard to be part of, for the relationship I had imagined rather than the one that actually existed. But I also felt freed from the endless cycle of giving without receiving even basic respect in return. My childhood friend Michael texted to check if we were still on for our traditional Christmas Eve drink. We had started this tradition in college when neither of us could face going home for the holidays. At the bar, I told him everything. Honestly, Ryan, he said after listening intently, the only surprising thing is that you didn't do this years ago. They've been using you since your dad died. I wanted to believe we were still a family, I admitted. That if I just tried hard enough, was generous enough, they'd eventually include me. That's not how family works, Michael said gently. Real family doesn't have to be bought. Before going to sleep, I sent one text message to my mother's phone. I've revised our financial relationship to match our personal one. Then I turned my phone to silent, placed it in the hotel room safe, and tried to sleep. Despite everything, I felt a strange peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval or inclusion. I had finally accepted the reality they had been showing me all along. In their eyes, I wasn't family. And now, they weren't my financial responsibility. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. I allowed myself to sleep in, then ordered room service breakfast, a luxury I rarely indulged in. After eating, I retrieved my phone from the safe and braced myself for the aftermath. 47 missed calls. 16 voicemails. 39 text messages. I listened to the voicemails first, hearing the progression of emotions in real time. First voicemail, 9:23 p.m. Ryan. It's Mom. What is this text supposed to mean? Call me back immediately. Second voicemail, 10:14 p.m. This isn't funny, Ryan. The Netflix stopped working in the middle of Tyler's movie. Call me back. Third voicemail, 11:37 p.m. The internet is down, and none of our cards are working at the gas station. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Call me. Fourth voicemail, 7:15 a.m. Ryan Robert Miller, you turn everything back on right now. It's Christmas morning and we have no electricity. This is absolutely unacceptable. Fifth voicemail, 8:04 a.m. Honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Last night was just a small gathering for close family. I was going to invite you for Christmas dinner today. Please call me back so we can fix this. The remaining voicemails followed the same pattern, alternating between rage, demands, and attempts at manipulation. Warren's deep voice appeared in later messages, first threatening legal action, then shifting to an uncomfortably conciliatory tone that rang false in every syllable. The text messages told a similar story. Mom, 9:15 p.m. What does that cryptic message mean? Call me. Mom, 10:30 p.m. The internet is out. Did you forget to pay the bill? Jessica, 11:45 p.m. My card just got declined at the mall. Fix it. Warren, 12:03 a.m. You're making a big mistake. We need to talk now. Tyler, 7:30 a.m. Why isn't anything working? What did you do? Mom, 8:15 a.m. Ryan, please. It's Christmas. Tyler is crying because he can't play his games. Is that what you wanted? Jessica, 9:20 a.m. You're ruining everything again. Jacob's family is coming over and we have no electricity. How could you be so selfish? Warren, 10:05 a.m. Let's discuss this like adults. Whatever you think happened, we can work it out. The desperation in their messages increased as the morning progressed. I scrolled through Instagram and saw that Jessica had posted photos from the engagement party just hours before the utilities were cut, everyone smiling in their fancy clothes. Raising glasses in a toast. The caption read, "The perfect night with the people who matter most." The irony wasn't lost on me. I discovered they had planned a post-Christmas trip to the Bahamas. Flights and resort already booked using funds from our joint account. The trip that my mother had never mentioned. Despite our conversation about Christmas plans just 2 weeks earlier, I contacted Dr. Abrams, my therapist, who agreed to an emergency virtual session despite the holiday. "What you're feeling is a normal response to years of emotional neglect," she assured me. "The difficulty is that you've been conditioned to see yourself as the problem, to believe that if you were somehow different, they would treat you better. They'd been using me," I said. The reality still sinking in. "Yes," she agreed simply. "And now that you've removed the financial component, you're seeing the relationship for what it truly is." More messages from friends came through, people who had heard versions of the story from both sides. Michael texted, "Your mom is calling everyone looking for you. Told her I haven't heard from you. Stay strong." My college roommate wrote, "Dude, your sister is posting some wild stuff about you on social media. You okay?" I checked Jessica's Twitter account to find a series of vague posts about toxic family members and Christmas ruined by selfish behavior. She had conveniently omitted any mention of excluding me from her engagement party or their years of financial dependence. After careful consideration, I composed an email to the family email addresses. "I will meet with you on December 26th at 2 p.m. at Riverside Coffee Shop to discuss recent events. I will not respond to further messages or calls until then. This meeting will be in a public place only, and I will leave immediately if anyone becomes hostile or disrespectful." I spent the rest of Christmas Day researching narcissistic family dynamics and financial abuse. The patterns were startlingly familiar: the golden child, Jessica; the forgotten child, me; the enabler, Mom; and the controller, Warren. I journaled extensively, documenting memories that suddenly made sense in this new context. Mom forgetting to tell colleges about my scholarship applications. Warren suggesting I was not cut out for competitive programs. Jessica being praised for C grades while my achievements were minimized. Family photos being taken while I was at work or school. The constant financial emergencies that somehow aligned with luxury purchases. Each memory strengthened my resolve. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an isolated incident, it was the culmination of years of systematic exclusion and exploitation. The doorstep rejection was merely the moment the mask finally dropped completely. I prepared talking points for the meeting, determined to remain calm and factual. This wouldn't be about emotions or accusations. It would be about establishing reality and setting permanent boundaries. For the first time, I would be speaking with them as an equal. Not as the family ATM desperate for inclusion. As night fell on Christmas Day, I received one final text from my mother. "Brian, I'm not feeling well. The stress has triggered my blood pressure condition. If you care at all, you'll turn everything back on tonight." I recognized the medical manipulation tactic, one she had used countless times before. I didn't respond. Instead, I ordered dinner from the hotel restaurant, watched a movie I had been wanting to see, and went to bed early. Tomorrow would require all my strength and clarity. December 26th arrived with a light snowfall that dusted the city in fresh white. I dressed carefully for the meeting, casual but put together in jeans, a sweater, and my good winter coat. I wanted to appear neither intimidated nor aggressive. I arrived at Riverside Coffee Shop 20 minutes early, selected a table in the corner with good visibility but some privacy, and ordered a black coffee. The coffee shop was decorated for the holidays, with twinkling lights and a small tree in the corner. Christmas music played softly in the background, creating an incongruous, cheerful atmosphere for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. I placed a folder containing printouts of financial records on the table and waited. They arrived as a unit: Mom, Warren, Jessica, and Tyler. Mom wore an expensive-looking cream sweater and full makeup, though her eyes seemed puffy from crying or lack of sleep. Warren was dressed in business casual, as if attending a work meeting. Jessica looked sullen in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater I recognized as a gift from me last Christmas. Only Tyler, in his gaming hoodie and rumpled hair, seemed genuinely uncomfortable rather than angry. "Ryan," Mom began as they approached the table. She moved as if to hug me, but I remained seated. The rebuffed gesture set the tone immediately. "Thank you for coming," I said evenly. "Please sit down." Warren immediately took charge, pulling out chairs for Mom and Jessica while fixing me with a stern look. "This has gone far enough," he said in a low voice. "You've made your point. I haven't begun to make my point," I replied calmly. "But I appreciate your time today." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "How could you do this to us? On Christmas?" "Tyler had to spend the night at a friend's house because it was so cold." "You have a gas fireplace," I noted, "and emergency funds in your personal account that I've never had access to." Jessica kept her eyes on her phone, texting rapidly. "Jacob's parents think we're complete disasters now," she muttered. "Thanks for that." I opened the folder and placed the first document on the table, a list of all utilities and services I had been paying for, with monthly amounts and total yearly costs. "I've been supporting this household financially for 5 years," I began. "During that time, I've been systematically excluded from family events, milestones, and holidays. 2 nights ago, I was told explicitly that I am not considered family. It was just a small gathering." Mom interjected quickly. "Just close family. For Jessica's engagement," I finished for her. "An engagement no one bothered to tell me about, despite our conversation 2 weeks ago when you invited me for Christmas dinner." Jessica finally looked up from her phone. "We knew you judged Jacob. You always think you're better than everyone with your fancy job and perfect life." "I've never met Jacob," I pointed out. "And you used the joint account I share with Mom to purchase a $5,000 engagement ring without my knowledge or consent." Warren cleared his throat. "We were going to discuss the recent expenses with you. Diana was planning to call you after the holidays." I placed the next document on the table, a printout of their Bahamas vacation booking, paid for with my funds. Was she also planning to discuss this family vacation scheduled for next week? The one I wasn't invited to but apparently funded? Mom's face flushed. "Ryan, you're always so busy with work. We assumed you wouldn't be interested in a beach vacation." "You've never asked?" I said quietly. "Not once in 5 years have you invited me on a family vacation, despite my financial contributions that make those vacations possible." I laid out the remaining documents one by one, the spreadsheet of my total contributions, text message screenshots showing their requests for money, social media posts of family events I hadn't been invited to. "What exactly do you want?" Warren demanded, his businessman facade cracking slightly. "To embarrass your mother? To punish the family?" "I want honesty," I replied. "I want you to acknowledge that you've been using me financially while excluding me emotionally." Mom began to cry more dramatically. "That's not true. We love you. You're just so independent. So busy with your own life." "Then explain why Jessica's fiancé was told I'm the estranged black sheep of the family," I said, referencing information I'd gathered from social media comments. "Explain why I wasn't invited to her graduation, Tyler's 16th birthday, or your anniversary party last year." Tyler, who had been silent until now, looked up in surprise. "You weren't invited to my birthday? Mom said you were too busy to come." A moment of uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Jessica shifted in her seat, Mom looked away. And Warren's jaw tightened. "I've never been too busy for family events," I said, looking directly at Tyler. "I've never been invited. We didn't want you to overshadow Jessica's engagement." Warren finally admitted, his voice hard. "You always show up with expensive gifts and success stories. We wanted one night where she could shine without being compared to you." The raw honesty was almost refreshing after years of excuses and deflections. Jessica nodded in agreement, a flash of resentment crossing her face. "So you excluded me because I'm successful?" I clarified. "You don't understand what it's like living in your shadow," Jessica said bitterly. "Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. Mom and Dad talk about your accomplishments constantly, when you're not around." That revelation caught me off guard. "They what?" "Ryan wouldn't have failed that class. Ryan would have saved for that, not charged it. Ryan owns his own company already." She mimicked. "It's exhausting. Mom at least had the decency to look embarrassed." "We're proud of you," she said weakly. "Is that so wrong?" "What's wrong is treating me like an ATM while excluding me from the family," I replied. "What's wrong is taking my money while making me feel unwanted." Warren leaned forward, switching tactics. "Look, we all said things we didn't mean the other night. Diana was stressed about the party. Let's put this behind us. Unfreeze the accounts. Turn the utilities back on, and we can start fresh." I shook my head. "That's not going to happen. Moving forward, I won't be providing financial support for this family. You'll need to manage your own expenses like any other household. You can't just cut us off," Mom exclaimed. "We depend on that money." "That's precisely the problem," I said. "You've become dependent on my money while treating me as an outsider." "So that's it?" Warren asked, anger returning to his voice. "You're choosing money over family?" The irony of his statement wasn't lost on anyone at the table. I gathered my documents and stood up. "No, Warren. You all made that choice 2 nights ago when Mom said I wasn't family. I'm simply accepting your definition and adjusting my behavior accordingly." "Ryan, please." Mom reached for my hand. "We can work this out." "I agree," I said. "But not with more empty promises and manipulations. When you're ready to have an honest relationship that isn't based on financial exploitation, we can talk again." As I turned to leave, Tyler suddenly stood up. "Can I call you sometime?" he asked quietly. Warren started to object, but Tyler cut him off. "I'm 18 next month. I can talk to whoever I want." I nodded at my half-brother, seeing perhaps the one genuine connection worth salvaging. "Anytime, Tyler. My number hasn't changed." As I walked away, I heard Jessica's angry whisper, "What are we supposed to do now?" And Warren's harsh response, "Let him go. He'll be back when he realizes what he's done." But as I stepped out into the snow-covered street, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't be back, not on their terms, not ever again. The family I had desperately tried to be part of existed only in my imagination. It was time to build something real. New Year's Eve found me alone in my apartment in Seattle, watching the snow fall outside my window. After the confrontation at the coffee shop, I had driven back home, needing the familiarity of my own space to process everything that had happened. My phone had remained relatively quiet, a few tentative texts from Mom that I hadn't responded to, and one message from Tyler asking if I was okay. I had answered him briefly, letting him know I was fine and would talk when he was ready. The silence from the rest of the family spoke volumes. Without financial incentive, they had little interest in maintaining contact. It hurt, but the pain was clarifying rather than debilitating. On impulse, I searched through my contact list and found my father's brother, Uncle James. We hadn't spoken in years, Another relationship that had mysteriously faded after Mom remarried. I sent him a simple text. Hi, Uncle James. It's Ryan. I've been thinking about Dad lately and wondered how you're doing. His response came within minutes. Ryan. So wonderful to hear from you. We've missed you terribly. Are you in town? Would love to see you. That text led to a dinner invitation for the following weekend. I drove to Tacoma, where Uncle James lived with his wife Laura. Walking up to their modest home, I felt nervous. What if they rejected me too? Instead, I was enveloped in a bear hug the moment Uncle James opened the door. Look at you! He exclaimed. The spitting image of Robert. Over dinner, the truth emerged. They had tried to stay in touch after Dad died, but Mom had gradually restricted access, especially after marrying Warren. We sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, Aunt Laura explained. But Diana returned them, saying you were adjusting to your new family and needed space. Uncle James hesitated before adding, we thought, well, we assumed you didn't want contact with your father's side anymore. Especially when you never responded to our invitation to your graduation. What invitation? I asked, my stomach sinking. They exchanged glances before Uncle James went to a drawer and returned with a card, a high school graduation congratulation, never opened, marked, returned to sender, in Mom's handwriting. That dinner was the first of many. Uncle James connected me with my paternal grandparents, who at 84 and 82 were still vibrant and overjoyed to reconnect with their only grandchild. They had been told I wanted no contact after Dad died, another lie that had robbed us all of years together. In my grandfather's attic, we found a box of letters my father had written to me before he died, letters Mom was supposed to give me as I grew up. Reading his words, his hopes for my future, his advice about life and love and work, I felt his presence more strongly than I had in decades. Your dad would be so proud of the man you've become, my grandfather said, his voice thick with emotion. So damned proud. As winter turned to spring, I created new traditions and connections. I volunteered at a homeless shelter, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping people who had fallen on hard times. I deepened friendships that had sometimes taken a back seat to my futile efforts with family. I started therapy sessions with Dr. Abrams twice monthly, working through the complex grief of losing my family not once but twice, first when my father died, and again when I finally recognized the transactional nature of my remaining family relationships. The legal aftermath unfolded predictably. My lawyer sent certified letters establishing financial boundaries. Mom attempted to access the frozen joint account through identity verification questions but failed. Warren sent one threatening letter about financial abandonment that my lawyer quickly dismissed with evidence of their misuse of funds. In April, I received a text from Tyler asking to meet privately. We met at a coffee shop near his school, where he slouched in his hoodie looking simultaneously younger and older than his 17 years. Things are weird at home, he admitted after we'd exchanged awkward greetings. Mom and Warren fight about money all the time now. Jessica moved in with Jacob, but they're already having problems. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. How are you doing? He shrugged. Okay, I guess. I got into Portland State and Oregon Tech, but they're freaking out about how to pay for it. Warren said I might need to take a gap year until they figure things out. Congratulations on your acceptances, I said. That's a big achievement. Thanks. He stirred his hot chocolate nervously. Mom said I shouldn't talk to you, that you abandoned the family. But that's not what happened, is it? I considered my response carefully. I stopped providing financial support after being told explicitly that I wasn't considered family. I don't see that as abandonment. I see it as accepting the relationship as it was defined for me. Tyler nodded slowly. They talk about you differently now. Mom cries sometimes, looking at old photos. Jessica says you're selfish, but... He trailed off. But what? But she also asked if I thought you'd pay for her wedding, so I don't think she gets it. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Tyler cracked a smile too. Perhaps his first genuine one of our meeting. Look, I said, what's happened between me and the rest of the family doesn't have to define my relationship with you. If you want to stay in touch, I'm here. Really? He looked skeptical. No strings attached? No strings, I confirmed. Just brothers. We established careful boundaries. I wouldn't use him to send messages to the family, and he wouldn't be pressured to act as their ambassador to me. I offered guidance with college applications and career planning, but made it clear that my financial support would come in the form of teaching him to be independent, not creating the same dependent relationship the others had exploited. In June, Jessica's engagement imploded spectacularly after her fiancé Jacob discovered some unspecified dishonesty that she vaguely referenced in bitter social media posts. I learned through Tyler that Jacob's parents had discovered the true nature of the family finances and warned their son about the pattern they observed. As summer approached, I bought a new apartment, a place that truly felt like mine, with no memories of financial conversations with Mom or guilt-inducing visits from Warren. I decorated it with photos of my father, my paternal grandparents, and new friends who valued me for myself, not my wallet. The most difficult moment came in August when Mom showed up unannounced at my workplace, looking thinner and older than I remembered. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, Ryan." 5 minutes. We sat in the small courtyard outside my office building. She explained that Warren had lost his job, Jessica had moved back home, and they were struggling to maintain the lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to. "We might lose the house," she admitted. "I didn't know who else to turn to." "You're turning to me because you need money," I observed. "Not because you miss me or value our relationship." She flinched but didn't deny it. "Family helps family," she said weakly. "We established I'm not family," I reminded her gently. "Your words, Mom. Not mine." "I was wrong," she whispered. "I was terribly wrong. And I'm sorry." I wanted to believe her. Part of me, the little boy who had lost his father, the teenager who had sought inclusion, the young man who had bought affection, wanted desperately to accept her apology and open my wallet and heart again. But the adult I had become recognized the pattern too clearly. "I forgive you," I said finally. "But I can't go back to the way things were. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it needs to be about genuine connection, not financial support." She left without the check she had hoped for, her expression a mixture of disappointment and resignation. I didn't know if we would ever find our way to an authentic relationship. But for the first time, I wasn't willing to pay for a counterfeit one. By fall, I had created a scholarship in my father's name at my old high school, funding it with money that would have otherwise enabled my family's financial dependence. The Robert Miller Memorial Scholarship would help students who, like me, had lost a parent and needed support to pursue higher education. At the inaugural awards ceremony, I spoke briefly about my father's belief in education and responsibility. In the audience sat Uncle James and Aunt Laura, my grandparents, and to my surprise, Tyler, who had driven up without telling anyone else in the family. "They wouldn't understand," he explained afterward. "But I wanted to be here for this. For you. For the memory of the grandfather I never knew." That moment, standing with my half-brother as we honored the father he had never met but whose values I had tried to embody, felt more like family than any Christmas or birthday I had experienced in the Mitchell household. Family, I was learning, wasn't defined by obligation or financial transactions. It was built on respect, reciprocity, and genuine care. Sometimes it included blood relatives. Sometimes it didn't. The painful catalyst of that Christmas rejection had ultimately led me to a more authentic life surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. And that was a gift beyond measure. 1 year after the doorstep rejection that changed everything, I hosted a small Thanksgiving gathering in my new home. The dining table that had once seemed too large for just me was now surrounded by people who had become my chosen family. Uncle James and Aunt Laura brought homemade cranberry sauce and family stories. My paternal grandparents contributed traditional pumpkin pies and photographs from holidays long past. Michael and his girlfriend Sarah arrived with wine and warmth. And Tyler, now a freshman at Oregon Tech studying computer science with a partial scholarship and his own carefully budgeted student loans, brought his trademark appetite and growing confidence. Mom asked where I was going today, Tyler mentioned as we cleared dishes after the meal. I told her I was having Thanksgiving with my brother. How did she take that? I asked. Loading the dishwasher. He shrugged. She got quiet. Warren changed the subject. Jessica rolled her eyes. Are you okay? I know it must be difficult navigating between us. Actually, it's getting easier, he said. The more time I spend away at college, the clearer things become. I see patterns now that I never noticed before. Those patterns had become increasingly apparent in the limited contact I maintained with my mother and stepfamily. Diana still reached out periodically, usually when financial difficulties arose. Our conversations had evolved, though. I no longer offered money, and she had slowly stopped asking directly, though financial struggles remained her primary topic. Warren had lost his position at the financial firm and was working in real estate with limited success. The house had been refinanced to cover debts, and many of the luxury items had been sold. Jessica had moved back home after her engagement ended, working retail and blaming everyone but herself for her circumstances. I maintained firm boundaries with all of them. When Mom invited me to Christmas dinner, the first such invitation since the previous year's rejection, I politely declined. I've made other plans, I explained. But thank you for thinking of me. The truth was I had indeed made other plans, a ski trip with friends followed by Christmas dinner with my father's family. I was no longer waiting by the phone for inclusion that would never be genuine. The most significant confrontation had occurred 3 months earlier, when Mom had shown up at my apartment unannounced, clearly desperate. Warren's business isn't working out, she explained nervously. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. That must be stressful. Ryan, she said, her voice breaking. I need help. We need help. Just this once. Mom, I replied gently. This is exactly how it started every other time. Just this once became a pattern of dependence that lasted years. So you're just going to let us lose our home? She asked. Tears forming. After everything I've done for you? The question hung in the air between us. After everything she had done for me? The exclusion, the manipulation, the exploitation? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked quietly. Since Dad died, what support have you offered that wasn't ultimately self-serving? She couldn't answer. In her worldview, giving birth to me and providing basic necessities during childhood entitled her to a lifetime of financial support without reciprocal emotional investment. I can recommend a good financial counselor, I offered. And I'm happy to review your budget if you'd like. But I won't be providing financial bailouts anymore. She left angry and hurt. But for the first time, I felt no guilt watching her go. I had offered real help, the kind that might lead to genuine independence rather than continuing the cycle of dependence. Her rejection of that offer told me everything I needed to know about what she truly wanted from our relationship. As Thanksgiving evening wound down, my grandfather pulled me aside. At 85. His health was beginning to fail, but his mind remained sharp. Your father would be damn proud of you, he said, his voice gravelly with emotion. Not just for your success, but for your character. For knowing your worth. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. I wish he were here. He is, in a way, my grandfather replied, tapping my chest. The best parts of him live on in you. The integrity, the work ethic, the compassion, those didn't come from nowhere. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning the last of the dishes, I found myself reflecting on the year's journey. The pain of that Christmas rejection had been acute, but necessary, like setting a broken bone so it could heal properly rather than continuing to function in a damaged state. I had learned that family isn't defined by DNA or legal documents, but by consistent love and respect. I had discovered that generosity without boundaries isn't really generosity at all. It's a transaction where you're purchasing the illusion of belonging at the cost of your self-worth. Most importantly, I had realized that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept people at their word. When my mother said I wasn't family, she was telling me a painful truth that I had been avoiding for years. The new year approached with promise rather than dread. My company was thriving. My scholarship program was preparing to support its second student, and my relationships, both with my father's family and my chosen family, were deepening in authentic ways. Tyler was finding his own path, learning from my mistakes rather than repeating them. "I'm not giving Jessica money for her spring break trip," he told me proudly during our last phone call. I said I needed it for books. "Good for you," I had replied, recognizing the healthy boundary setting that had taken me decades to learn. As I placed the last clean dish in the cabinet, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Best Thanksgiving ever. Thanks for hosting, brother." Brother. The word warmed me in a way that biological connections never had. Family isn't always who raises you or shares your blood. Sometimes, family is who sees your worth without a price tag attached. Sometimes, family is who stays when everyone else treats you as disposable. That Christmas rejection had been the most painful gift I'd ever received, and ultimately, the most valuable. It had forced me to confront the difference between the family I imagined and the one that actually existed. It had freed me to build connections based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. It had taught me that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's simply accepting the reality that others have already shown you. So have you ever had to make a difficult decision to set boundaries with family? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most necessary growth. Thank you for listening, and wishing you all the courage to value yourselves as much as you value others.